I guess, excuse me.
We can make an emergency exception.
I guess what we could do is put in the estimated number.
That's where I was going.
And then Attorney Stockmeyer would let us know after the board met, and we could, as you suggested, you could amend that if you wanted to, and then you would have an accurate number to advertise for the public hearing on the 29th.
Because we can't just wait till that.
Right, and I may not have totally understood the point you originally
Yes,
made.
sir.
My consternation about amendments applies later in the process. If you were to amend at the meeting for the first reading, I would not have a problem with that. 'Cause
And
that
that
would
will
be,
allow us to publish, because we can't wait for the state and then meet. There's no time for our agenda setting. So there's a solution here. I'm not worried.
I was
School
just,
Board Member Truman?
I was just going to suggest, like, couldn't you publish a number and then say TBD on the actual date or something along those lines? Like,
we'd probably put the numbers in because they're really not likely to change. And if they do change, they're not likely to change by that much. And it's probably easier also to amend a number than to amend a TBD or.
I was just thinking, like, putting in the number and then, like, that number would be, like, somehow put a footnote in there that that number would be confirmed on the 10th. I don't know, but.
City
So
Administrator?
I think it's important that we had this discussion in detail a couple weeks ago. What I think is important is that we will, for the agenda, publish the estimated number. If we start the meeting at whatever time, at 7:30 p.m. or whatever, it is hopeful that Attorney Stockmeyer will contact somebody, probably me, and let us know if that number stands or if the state school board has amended that number. And if the state school board has amended that number, then the city council can amend the first reading, and then we can hopefully pass that, and then we will be publishing on the 11th an accurate number.
Correct. Perfect. Yes, I'll be notifying you, confirming or letting you know of any change, as well as Michelle.
Yeah.
Jeremy will already know, I assume, so.
And probably for the 10th, we'll have to start the meeting later. What time do they meet, Jeremy, the state?
Rob, do they meet in the morning, do you know?
1 o'clock.
Typically?
Oh, okay, so
Okay,
we'll know by then. Okay.
timing should still be the same.
Norm says they usually meet at 1 in the afternoon, so more time compression. We're used to it.
Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you all.
Okay. So,
Okay, item B, exterior building preview.
So we move on from the real exciting stuff to now an opportunity to welcome Oak Point to come up, because obviously it's one thing talking about the bonds and all of the excitement, but it's also very fun to start dreaming about what we are hopefully able to build for our community here as part of that, and to talk about some of those features. So I'm going to turn it over to Rob in Oak Point at this point.
Thanks, Jeremy. So this, as much fun as I've just had listening to all this, and it really was great to listen to. I'm glad I wasn't part of the conversation. This is the fun part for us. So hopefully it works out for you too. This was the site we've been talking about for a long time now, and talking about traffic and everything to do with the site. Now we get to talk about the building itself. Okay, so. Oh, it's slow. Okay, it's slow. So this site with the buildings on it. The one on the right is the 1 through 5 school, and the pre-KK is the one on the left. The main access is off Millbrook Road, and the secondary access for buses primarily is off of Route 1. We had a lot of conversations, many conversations with DOT, and I think we're at the point where we're very comfortable with this. I believe you've seen the floor plan. We're not going to spend a lot of time with this, but this is the floor plan of the 1 through 5 school. That's the second floor. Okay. Now two? Okay. It's a slow journey. Okay.
That is the square footage that is a local option in the entire building. And so that it's drawn out, and you'll see from the totals that you're looking at 5125 as the local piece at this point out of a 157 square foot building.
So the elevations, it's a pretty efficient building in the way it's come together, and we worked very hard with your administrators and your educators to come up with a great floor plan and to come up with a building that will work well within the site parameters that we've got. So this is the elevations. The lowest piece is the front door, and the cafeteria to the left, and music and art to the right. The next one up is the back facing the woods, and then you've got the side facing the parking, the south side, if you would, with the gym on the left-hand side, and the classroom wings on the right, and up above is the classroom wing to the left, and industrial arts or the STEM area to the right, and additional classrooms up where the brown is. So, in working through with this, the majority of the building will be masonry. The brown is a manufactured product that looks like wood. It's a lovely site that we're able to go into, and it's a wooded site. But honestly, a lot of that's going to be removed to put the building in. But we're going to retain as much of the wooded area as we can. And this is a 3D rendering, so you can kind of see how it comes together. The top is the 1 through 5 building. To the right of it is the classroom, 2 of the classroom wings for the pre-KK building. The next one down, you can see the front entranceway better, and the art and music to the right, and then to the left is the pre-KK, and then the lowest one is the classroom wings. The gym is to the left, but the classroom wings coming out towards the woods. So it's pretty efficient. But when you come up with a floor plan that works as well as this one does, we then have to come up with an interesting elevation so that it's not too busy because it's a big building, but interesting enough that you have the kids are constantly seeing something that they may not have seen before. We were working very hard with the state to get to this point, and with the educators as well. Some of the close-ups. The top is the front door. The blues that were picked were kind of off of your Saco documents. The hues might be a little bit differently, but the Saco, the blues that show up in your yes, thank you, and the logo. So, and you can see the brown wood-like material to the left, and the the blues are also metal product. Most of the other things are masonry. And the middle one is the entranceway for the kids coming off the bus, and the top one again is the main entranceway for everybody else. And then the bottom part is looking into the courtyard. And then this is the floor plan for the pre-KK school with the kindergarten on the top part, 2 different wings. We've modified it a little bit since the last time we showed this to have the library type spaces on the corners, the beige corners that you see on the wings, and the pre-KK is the one, the 2 wings on the lower area, and then the public areas and excuse me, public areas, but the communal areas within the school is the part in the middle. And this was developed after we looked at a lot of buildings with your educators, and this is the pre-KK. We wanted to have a little less of an institutional look to it. And it's actually your city administrator might recognize some of this. We did the St. Patrick's School down in Portsmouth, which didn't look exactly like this, but some of the things that we did down there were done and liked a lot by the educators. So we kind of took from some of those ideas and modified them a lot. And then this is in 3-dimension, kind of a drone shot, if you would. And that's it. Again, this is a kind of a glimpse as to what we've been working on for quite a while. What you've seen until now is mostly traffic, and some site. We've been working on this for about a year and gone through a lot of different gyrations and different ways to get to this point. And the people we've been working with seem to be happy with the direction it's gone.
Great, thank you so much. Okay. Next item is ED 279, school subsidy presentation.
Thank you, guys. All right, so we are at the point of time, and I know we're shifting gears here tonight, and we have to shift our mind over to school budget because it's early February, and you guys are working on the town side, city side of things, and we're working on our budgets on our side, and probably normally in the meeting, this would have been a school department presentation of 279 and also kind of a review of the first budget memo. But you're sitting here, you're going to get this information at some point again, so it seemed to make a lot of sense to me to do it all at one time so that you didn't kind of get a repeat of everything that was going on. So I think that where I would like for us to kind of start, and we'll be referencing both documents throughout, is looking at the one that is spreadsheet type form, which is your state subsidy formula. It's really hard. I put this on paper because it's just sometimes hard to read on a screen, especially in a situation like that. But I want to talk to you tonight first and foremost about what makes up school subsidy, how the state gets to that number, and some important pieces for us to consider. So on page 1 of the document, the first thing schools do every single year is on October 1st, we present to the state, it's required for us to do student counts. We know that during COVID that certainly there were times where our populations left because some people chose to homeschool during that time, thinking about safety, and our numbers dropped. At this point in time, two things have happened in our community since that is, one, a lot of kids back in school. Parents put their kids back in school. Additionally, we know that our new neighbor population is around 85 students, give or take, on every day. So students who have joined us, who are coming from the hotel, have added about 85 students district-wide to us. So that pushes that number up a bit more from the last year. So what they do is they take an average of the 2 years, and for our elementary population, we're at 1,900.5 students. Now, why that is important is because then they take that number of students and they begin to sort and create ratios for number of students towards teaching staff, ed techs, librarians, health officials, principals, et cetera, et cetera. And you'll see that in the next big red block is that when EPS was designed, and again, the name, Essential Programs and Services, they're saying this is kind of like the floor of what you should have for staff in your building. Unfortunately, when we look at how that translated to school budgets, town budgets, and the communities, a lot of time that gets kind of read more as a ceiling than a floor, which can make it very difficult. So as you look down through, what it does is there's a matrix at the state level that assigns a salary to every employee that's in the district based off education and experience. And if you're at 1.0, there's a certain amount of dollars that flow into the formula. If you're under, it's a percentage of that, and you can see those in the second bigger box. Regional index, that's the third box on the page. What the state has done over that time is they've assigned regions to the state of Maine that said based off what their expected cost of living in that region is, you can kind of either get additional weights where you can see that we're at a 1.09 because they're saying that our region in southern Maine is more expensive to live in than the average. So if you're a superintendent in this level of the state and you're at a plus more than 1, you're saying, okay, that's a good thing. If you're a superintendent in Washington County who has a less than 1 weight and you're actually getting penalized in that area, you're probably not quite as for that. But when you take all of these costs on the first page and you add them up, you get what is called per pupil rates. And so for our community here, we have a calculation that is a per pupil rate. And then our second number, because we tuition our students to Thornton Academy and we don't build that information, you get a state rate assigned to you. Any questions on that first page? Okay, second page. The second page, and you'll see at the top again, starts with student counts. And these are your subsidizable student counts. This includes your high school students. So now you can see that that number has grown. And then over a 2-year average, we're at 2,766.5 students on our subsidizable rates. Now what happens with these numbers is there are many different factors throughout the 279 that assigns a dollar value to each student that you have in the category. So an example, you can look at pre-K students, and you will see that 8,314 times 127 gives you a number. And that follows down through the first part, looking at your student counts. Now your second is your weighted counts, okay? Looking at the same percentage of students, and now there are some additional factors that they give an extra amount of money for. The first one is your disadvantaged rates. That is talking about in what prior to the state providing free and reduced lunch for all kids in public schools, That is where you would get how you'd get that number would be classifying students based off free and reduced lunch. Our disadvantage rate in the city is 28%. 28% of our students are reported in that category as disadvantaged, which is an increase of 2.77% from the year prior. That 28% is multiplied by our population of students, and each of the students in those counts gets another 0.15 factor, and you can see the additional money that is added down that column. The second box that's important, or the third box on that page when you look at weights, is our multilingual learners, which are our ML students that live in our community. And as you can see, we have, I've got a line through the middle there, over 200 students in our community. And those students are provided an additional half a weight as part of the formula. And you can see the dollar amounts of subsidy that's added in that category. As you continue to move through this from targeted funds for assessments and other pieces, what the numbers are building is an operating allocation for the school department. So the higher this number is, based off student counts, is what starts the process of building what your total allocation is that is then put to a mathematical formula for valuation. So as we go to page 3 of this piece, you have some expenditure-driven kind of parts of the subsidy formula, which are your other subsidizable costs that are based off expenses. Gifted and talented education. There is an amount that we spend in code for gifted and talented. There is an amount for special education. There's an amount for high cost out of district. There is transportation. There is approved bus lease purchases. So when we apply and the state says, hey, we're going to allow you to purchase a bus based off a 5-year lease purchase, and you have 7 buses and it adds up to an amount of money, that's where you get the money back for approved buses. So that's, while you'll hear in the budget that I may have 2 additional new buses put into the budget for lease purchase, hoping that later in this spring they'll send us the email that says, great, you've had 2 more funded. We pay the first year, and then 5 years in the rears, you're getting an amount of money for those buses. The next piece is your teacher retirement, and that's the amount of money that we put towards teacher retirement out of payroll tax. As you continue down the page, there are 2 additional numbers. First one, lease space. If you remember a couple of years ago, when we filled out the application form for Toddle Inn, we were able to get, at that time, it was $8 a square foot. That was like an $81,000 number last year. They've increased the square footage lease piece, and that's up over $100,000 now. I believe next year is our last year that I can do that through that piece, because there's only so many years that you're allowed to lease a space where they say, as a school department, you need to have had it figured out by that time, that they would reimburse for that.
Do they allow for extensions? For example, hey, you're about to build a school?
No, not on that one. I think we were pretty lucky that we were already in the building, and then we were able to pull that through with some help from the department on that piece. But at the end of the year, we're hoping that we know that our lease runs out in a year too, so wouldn't be subsidized. We'll have to make decisions as a school community of what's going to be the next best steps for that. The second number on that page is IVF, which is insured value factor. That is part of our contractual agreements with Thornton Academy. The state reimburses that at 6%. We pay 7%, and that's in that number. So all of those 3 pages adds up to what your total allocation is. Page 4 is where you take your total allocation plus your municipal debt, which in this case is IVF and the lease space. Add those together for the total municipal allocation. And now we bring in property value into the equation. And what I would ask you to look for as we talk through this is if you go to the memo and you look under valuation, you'll see the chart of where we have been as a community since 2016. Valuation at the state level is a 3-year average of property values set by the Secretary of State in conjunction with your municipality. And as you can see, if you look at 2025 and our 3-year piece, which we came off an increase of $221 million in value in Saco, that number is multiplied by the state mill rate, which is a required mill rate for education at 6.62%. And that number says to a community, in order to get what we're going to give you, you must raise that amount locally. That's not a problem here. We raise more money than that number. But that's a number that has increased from the prior year for subsidy pieces that's looking at, like, they're requiring an extra $232,000 to be raised in order to get through this process. You take what you're required to raise, subtract that from your total allocation, and that is your pre-K through 12 subsidy. So City of Saco is getting $19.5 million in-state subsidy from this page. When you turn to the last page on this sheet, you'll see that there's another $129,000 that is received for being part of an educational service center. They pay a dollar per mount per student for being part of one of those that was signed into law about 7 or 8 years ago, ending up $9.63 million in total state subsidy, which means the state share from education in this community is $49.93, and the local share is just over 50%. So it's kind of a half and half situation. When, and I'm going to say when we vote for a state-approved building project, on page 3, you will see a cost of where all of that money would come in for a state-approved project. So it's going to kind of inflate what the state share for education is because they're going to be paying a majority of that bond. That's how it's run through the formula in that. Now, why I asked you, as we talk about that and we talk about valuation, the reason I asked you to turn to the valuation page of the budget is because we can go to the Secretary of State website right now, and we already know within, a few dollars of what our 3-year average picture will be heading into next cycle. And you can see that, again, valuation in the city on that 3-year average is going to jump more than it did this time around. You're going to be adding another over $110 million more to that. How does that mathematically work for us? More valuation, more cost shifted to the local taxpayer. And so that's an important piece for us to talk about. So before I head into the memo piece of it, I just want to go back and answer any questions about the formula piece that you may have.
Any questions for Superintendent Ray?
Okay, formula piece is done. When we go to the memo that is the budget that is now sitting in front of every school committee member here tonight, Finance committee members, you get a little bit of a thicker one with every single item. The rest of the board, I've saved a little bit of paper for you, and you'll have more of a line-by-line one. But either of you guys will be able to go to the website, click on the detailed budget, and scroll through, I don't know, 700 or 800 pages that are there of items of everything that comprise in our budget. Schools typically are no different than anybody else, where the cost of a crayon is more than it was last year. Same thing for a glue stick, same thing for all of the costs. Things like insurances, not only health insurance, but your property casualty insurances are where you're seeing increases. But when you look at the funding as a total, this is kind of an easy cheat sheet for everybody, is when you look at this gray box, and you can kind of look at the pieces of where there were changes, whether that be for state subsidy, local subsidy, et cetera. When you look at the bottom line of what we got for state subsidy more, we actually did pretty good. $1.4 million. That's a pretty good day. Especially knowing that our valuation has gone up. One of the things that I would say that in looking at the chart of kind of everybody in across the state of city values and all of those pieces is that probably the fact that Saco property values had been a little bit higher over the last couple of years softened the blow of the increase. You were actually kind of right around the state average. You weren't above that. I tend to think that, and I certainly haven't spent the time of looking at every municipality in the state and doing the calculation yet of what it will be like based off the 3-year average. Based off what I see there, I'm thinking that it's going to be higher than the state average next year. And again, location, water, all of those, Southern Maine, all of those pieces are going to factor into those pieces. What I really want to start drawing attention to is at the bottom of page 2, when you think about a budget that is of our size, where do cost increases come from? Because things go up. And when you look at it, our budget that I'm presenting to you tonight, from an expense point of view, not including the revenue, is up 5.33% and like $2.7 million. And 4 lines, categories, hold the majority of that. Tuition to Thornton Academy, salary and step increases for all employees, Family Medical Leave Act payroll tax, which I want to talk to you guys a little bit more about, and health insurance increases and changes. And that equals almost $2.5 million out of a 2.7. There's not a lot left out there, and that hasn't even talked about property casualty, fuel, parts for buses, those types of things that have gone up. One of those lines, the payroll tax piece, would not only impact school departments, but could as well have an impact on municipalities. Yes. The requirement is that municipalities and school departments, and I think we all who have been in school departments or municipalities, myself we're fortunate with paid leave. We have some great paid leave benefits already in place in our organizations. 15 or 16 sick days, personal days, protections for a sick bank if you've been in there in the organization for a while, Family Medical Leave Act, some of those types of things are there. What this essentially is doing is placing a 1% payroll tax on all of our organizations. There is not clarity at this point in time when kind of, again, this bill didn't even get debated. It was in the governor's budget at 1%, that they had put in there at 1%, with an initial thought that this was split evenly between employee and employer, which also means that for all of our employees that we have in both of our organizations, there's another 0.5% possibly of your wage earnings going to this tax. So there's a driver of $111,000 that's in the budget on a tax that came our way without public debate, that certainly other people will have their own personal beliefs on that, but definitely passed on in our piece. Every $50,000 approximately in a local tax increase is about, if I decrease $50,000, I can decrease almost another 0.25% tax increase. And so, John, I know it looks like you're ready to say something. I want to hand it to you over there.
Well, I think just following up on the FMLA issue, so in the fiscal '25 budget, what we'll be doing is putting 6 months of that in, which is about 0.25% for the employee, 0.25% for the employer, school department, city. So come fiscal '26, we'll have to put the full 1% in, actually 0.5% from the city, school board, and the other 0.5% from the employee. What the superintendent mentioned is something that I'll be talking with the council at some later date, is strategy relative to, we have 4 collective bargaining agreements expiring, so we'll have to talk about that, and I'll be talking to the city council, because as the superintendent said, we have a lot of benefits woven into the collective bargaining agreements that we want to make sure that we're not paying for and then also paying twice for the FMLA, which there won't be any money available under FMLA until January 1 of 2026. So it actually starts paying in on January 1, 2025, but no benefits will be distributed until January 1, 2026. And the State Rules Committee, I believe now, is just in the process of creating rules for this, even though we now have to put it into our budgets. I might add, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jeremy, this isn't just municipalities and schools, this is everybody. You know, if you have a business, anything. So, but we're preparing within the city side to try to look at how we're going to address this from a collective bargaining standpoint.
So as we look at those pieces, and to bring those pieces up, you know, again, maybe an area that we'll be able to slate back. Hopefully you get some good news on insurance. But again, you look at so much of your budget being driven by so little as far as controllable lines. This is where the challenge becomes. It's my job as superintendent to make sure that I present something to the school committee that I've always been probably a little bit more conservative in nature than others, and even when I see the bottom line here and the percentage, it makes me a little uneasy. But it's my job to make recommendations of what I think we can do, and certainly as elected officials, you get to debate those decisions, and ultimately, the school committee in conjunction with the city council determines the amount that would be funded, and it's our job as administrators and school committees to then go back if there's any adjustments throughout the process to figure out, you know, what would be the effects of that. So one of the things that I try to do is when we try to make decisions that are there, we try to look at, you know, student enrollments. And I've provided you student enrollments and class sizes that we're pretty, you know, I want to say pretty fortunate to have here in Saco. You know, if I had my wish, I wish that I could lower some of our elementary numbers a little bit more, but at the pure fact of the number of classrooms at C.K. Burns unless we're asking a teacher to teach off a cart, we don't have a lot of play in a building like that. And I know that at Fairfield School and Young School, there was points in times where we were on carts and we were able to get our music and our art teacher back into a classroom. And so one of my recommendations will be to look at class sizes. When I look at some of our neighboring communities, such as a community like Gorham, and share what our class sizes are with that superintendent of schools, and they're looking at 24, 25 plus kids in an elementary classroom and 27 in a middle school, look down and say, "Boy, we were pretty lucky here." And again, that's coming from someone who does have students I have my own children in these classrooms, and 27 and 25 in elementary wouldn't necessarily excite me as a parent as well. So I do have some recommendations, and again, looking at, to the best of our ability, always making sure that we think about reductions in a way that does not impact people and jobs. And so I will be making a recommendation to the board for the first draft of that. We would reduce 2 classroom positions at SMS that are unfilled positions. A reduction of a young Fairfield technology coordinator. Does have a person in that position, but we do have some other open positions in the district that the person would have the opportunity to move into. We've reduced contracted IEP coverage for state agency clients, and we'll be asking administration to be a bigger part of those meetings. We've looked at general fund summer school expenditures, and a lot of that is because we've been so fortunate to get grant funding through Title I reallocation to host. So holding that money that hasn't been spent in our budget for the last couple of years doesn't seem to make sense to me. The school committee and the city council over the last couple of years has been so supportive about the work that we have done to try to improve SMS in our other buildings, and we've made some, you guys, for those who got the tour have gone through, we've done a lot of different things. I think I've seen Phil sitting on the bleachers in there, and I think they're a little better than the wood ones. And so, you know, we were fortunate enough that with some of carryover and what you've had, we've had like $600,000 worth of work, and now we still have plenty of work to do, but I think we're at a point where we can start scaling back a little bit. Also knowing that we hopefully can put together a plan between both groups to say, where do we want SMS as we're opening these new buildings, and how much more work do we want to have done? Because not only have we been fortunate to have over $500,000 in the budget, we know that there's a large operational cost of a leased building that could come into play and what we do with that, and knowing that there's at least 3 more years of possible budgeting before some debt service comes on. And I know that one of the pieces with carryover that I hope to present to everybody later with a better plan is that we still do have 2 portables at Saco Middle School. We still have an area of the school that houses a majority of our special education students that should be further integrated into the regular part of the student body to provide equity. It's not the best ideal layout. And again, sometimes things are done because you do get hampered by construction of buildings. It can be very challenging, especially when you think that this was, my understanding, a school that at one point didn't have a lot of walls. And so it's our job to put together a plan to solve some of those problems over the next couple of years before we move into that. But we feel that we've started to take good steps. We feel like there's a plan that we can put in place to present to the school committee, to the city council, using fund balance to solve some of those things. Because it's important for me that if we're doing those other pieces and we have the money, we can create an expenditure and a revenue at the same time, so after it's complete, it kind of goes away and it's not an increased budget cost. We've looked at supplies for various departments, And then I have one addition in the budget. Another facilities and maintenance person. We currently have a director and 2 break-fix type people. One of the other pieces that over the next 3 or 4 years, and I've started to have some great conversations with Ryan and Pat, is that as you saw on the screen tonight, and you'll see on that paper there, we're going to have these beautiful new buildings. And I don't want to have us be in the position that 3 years after we moved in, we haven't funded the staff to maintain them. Meg and I in April had an opportunity to tour some, through this project, tour some buildings in other locations outside of the state. And when you kind of walked out, you're like, how old was that building? I don't want to be in that situation. We need to ramp up our services, because when you think of the agreements that the city has had with the school departments of maintenance and 10 feet outside the building and this, when you look at those drawings, there's a lot of pathways, there's a lot of plowing, there's a lot of sanding. It's our obligation to make sure that we have a good plan in place for those facilities as we move forward, while also making sure that we still have 3 years in the others and a middle school in the process. So we're looking at those pieces from that. Other considerations that we'd have in the budget would be, again, capital improvements, continued high cost of out-of-district placements for students with special services. Sometimes because of facilities or lack of space, not all students are able to be educated within their community. I think that we have an administration that believes that all students should have the opportunity for the best of our abilities to educate them within our system. If you live in Saco and your kids go to Saco schools, that's what our obligation is, to try to do our best to make sure that all kids can be educated in our schools and not in an out-of-district placement. Need to continue to explore energy and fuel costs, and certainly one of the pieces that probably won't allow us to move forward immediately is that we do have a couple of new buildings. But can we explore what solar options and other things can happen on that building, on a new roof, that will lower those costs over time? Equitable staff assignments between schools and students, making sure that there's equity that are there. Continued refinement of all of the budgets and all the costs that we have. Examine staffing needs as we transition into the new building. That's going to be a big piece, and kind of you talk about what those costs is, that as we start to do things now, knowing that space may look different than what we have to look at all of those pieces, because theoretically, when you move from 4 locations to 2, there should be some ability to have things that are more efficient from all sections of an organization. Will that be perfect? No, because bell schedules and class sizes will come into play. But from an operational standpoint, there will be some efficiencies. And then, as we've talked about, knowing that the lease of the pre-K piece ends in another year, and then our hope is that by early fall, we have some recommendations for the school committee of where we would program for kids based off all of the factors that we'll need to consider, from space, busing, what's available, operational expenditure. So when you go back and you think about revenues and expenditures, you can go down through the lines and you can see that the total piece of this is a $2.7 million expenditure increase, or 5.53%. The next page, obviously, is the balance of the revenues, and the revenues that go with this. And this is where your state subsidy increases come in, your local shares that you're required to have, additional local state share of the allocation, fund balance that we've had over time, that we have a little bit more that we could put in than in the past, adult education costs, and then finally, what our initial amount would be for an increase to total taxpayers of 1.436 million, or 4.75% is the initial piece. From this point, our finance committee will begin to look at the pieces of the budget in review. The board will have a review of all of those pieces. On March 18th, I will present again to the city council of all of the deliberations of where we are at that point. Always important for the council to remember that several things can happen. One, we won't have a health insurance number at that time. I suspect there will still be more conversations at the state level about FMLA, any additional funding, things that could impact us. There's a bill that I don't think will have a ton of impact on us, but it could, of hourly employee minimum wage. But there was a pretty hefty financial note to that one that came out of report. So there's a lot of moving parts still at that point. By the middle of April, we tend to have that honed in a little bit better and having all of those numbers so that collaboratively we can work together, knowing that we are one part of the puzzle, city budget is the other part of the puzzle, and that we can pull something together that will not only support our students in our schools, but also be something that, again, voters will also be going to the ballot on June 11th on a school budget, not a city budget. They get to go on the school budget, while also us making, as a community, an ask on the building project. So a lot happens on that day, and certainly, again, we are all concerned about abilities for everybody to pay in every single direction, and that's where we are at this moment.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the budget for Superintendent Wright? Okay, doesn't look like we're seeing any. So that will complete the agenda for the joint meeting with the council. We will take a quick 5-minute recess. Rejoining back at 9:08. And thank you, counselors, for attending this evening.
Did they give you a copy?
Okay, thank you all for joining us. Welcome back. Okay, so next item on the agenda. Item number 5 is the approval of the school board minutes dated January 24th, 2024. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Was
Artie?
he didn't speak up. Okay, motion made by Counselor Archie, second by School Board Member Truman. Okay, let's shift gears here. We're back on school board. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Okay, roll call vote. School Board Member Archie.
Yes.
School Board Member Pribble.
Yes.
School Board Member Richards.
I was absent, so I'll abstain.
School Board Member Roach.
Yes.
School Board Member Gale.
Yes.
School Board Member Truman.
Yes.
And School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 6 with 1 abstention. All right, item number 6 this evening is adjustments to the agenda. Are there any adjustments? Okay, we're not seeing any, no adjustments. Item number 7, there are no correspondence. Item number 8 this evening, public session. If there is any member of the public wishing to speak, please step up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. And thank you for being patient and waiting for the...
Hi, my name's Devin Lewis, 40 Wildwood Drive in Saco. I was here at Monday's City Council meeting saying the same thing, so I apologize, Madam Mayor. But this is concerning an incident at CK Burns where my child goes to school last week. There was talk of a child having a gun at the school. I heard when my child came home about it, she was telling me about it and how this child had made threats and threatened another girl and was removed from his class. So I followed up right away about it. I wasn't able to get a hold of any school staff right away, so I contacted the superintendent's office. Vice superintendent got a hold of me, and then I was able to talk to the vice principal of the school. However, all the answers they gave, I wasn't satisfied and I didn't feel safe with. No one could really tell me the school protocol until I talked to Officer Tichy, the school safety officer, the next morning. He let me know that there was an incident, there was an investigation. They determined it wasn't a high enough threat on their operational risk management to let the parents know. However, several parents were worried because their kids were talking about a student with a gun. The vice principal had told me that in his experience, there's no risk, which I found not to be a very good answer to my question. My main point is I would really like the policy adjusted to get information out to the parents, no matter what the level of risk assessed is when there's talk about a student having a gun. I'm sure a student is not going to tell cops during an interview that he does have one, if he did. There's been 400 school shootings since Columbine. If they were determined that they weren't a risk and there was no risk, then there wouldn't have been most of those shootings. There's a lot of protocols in the school, according to the safety officer, that lets people from the outside not come in, but if a student brings a gun in his bag, it only takes a few seconds for something to happen. This incident was really scary, whether it was a rumor or not. It's based in something, and it puts ideas in kids' heads, and I think we need to stop trying to protect a potential perpetrator's feelings and rights and think about all the other students' safety and their feelings, because I know a lot of students were scared. My daughter's 11. She asked me what a Glock was because that's what the boys were talking about him having. So if you have kids, I would urge you to take the policy seriously and not let rumors get back to the parents before school staff gets to the parents and explains to them whether it is or not a risk. Whether they deem it so or not, no one has experience in school shootings in Saco, according to Officer Tichy, so thank God. I hope that they don't, but this was a very scary situation, and I think a lot of consideration needs to be taken in it, that it wasn't. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to speak? Okay, not seeing anyone. Item number 9 this evening is the superintendent's report. Superintendent Ray?
All right, good evening. We're late into the evening on this one. I think we've talked budget pretty much enough in the other session. What we will need to do is, the next step on the budget process is, as a finance committee, pull together some dates of when we can review after February vacation. Have the opportunity for our principals to come in and present to you. One of the things that we know we'll go back to is the 4 different lines each and every time, because principals obviously don't have really any say in what a salary or health insurance piece goes up from a collective bargaining agreement. I want to put out a big congratulations to our students at SMS, who were the main winners of the Samsung grant that you got to see last time here. I know that we'll be inviting that group back to school committee, and the mayor has talked about inviting them to the city council. So we'll get to learn more about the progress. I believe now they have an opportunity where they have like a mentor from Samsung for the next piece as they move forward. So exciting news. Reminder to parents, February vacation is about a week away, a week and a half away. And if you look at the weather, knock on wood, I don't see snow in the forecast, and we possibly could be making it to February vacation without a snow day. So that would be, that's always a great thing, because not only do we worry about snow days in the wintertime, but going back to the other conversation, once June rolls around, we start to worry about heat at Burns School and all the other schools, except for Young School currently that does have air conditioning.
I hope you didn't just jinx us.
Oh, I'm sure I
You did that last year. You're like, it's January. We haven't used any. And then it
Oh,
snowed
wow.
like crazy. And I was like, oh, no, don't say it. So.
A good day in March might be nice for the kids, that we think about that. One of the pieces that we had talked about last time in Finance Committee that's two things that are moving forward is looking at the kind of garage at SMS for maintenance, so we actually have a proper place to work on items, repair things. Starting to move that to the planning board. We have to have a neighborhood meeting and some of those processes to go through, but trying to move that forward. There's actually 3 things, sorry. The second piece being that we looked at Saco Middle School because we're able to use, through our audit for the lunch program, there was an amount of money that's built up that we have to be able to spend down. We talked about new equipment, and one of the pieces is that we will be able to put windows in our cafeteria that you won't be able to see the outside, but you'll be able to see the hallway, so it will lighten that room, give it a more friendly atmosphere. But additionally, we're going to be able to use funds to purchase a generator, because we were thinking about the ability for, to make sure that if you have power disruptions, that we just bought new freezers, new refrigeration to be able to power that piece. When doing the cost analysis of only powering a portion of the building, which would have been like gym, main office, cafeteria, etc., there's almost no difference in the amount of wiring just to power the whole building. And so it would be an option for us to have a generated building in the community that sometimes community use for many other reasons based off warming centers, power outage. I suspect back when they had the ice storm, it would have been really nice at that point in time to think about those things. So that's a lot. Finally, the other piece that I do need to kind of start thinking about, that we need to start thinking about, is that you may have seen the governor's, the DOE, the commissioner's announcement that the plan that is currently in front of the Education Committee is to transition all CDS services from CDS to public schools. This is big. This is not small, because you're looking at probably upwards of 75 additional students who may be receiving services coming onto the school department responsibilities. Funding, it appears, is looking like it's going to run in 2 different ways. One is there will be an allocation that will be outside of the formula, and then an allocation that comes through the formula. We have not started to get those details. Their goal is that it's, you know, they have a goal of 1/3 of the schools will join this year, third of the schools will join next year, and 1/3 the following year. While I'm very enthusiastic about picking up those services, I'm also someone who makes sure I have all the details first on something like that. Like, because that can impact it could impact our budget, what's there. Saying to the DOE, like, yes, you've allocated this amount of money, but what if you're wrong? What if it's more than that? How do we properly bill main care? How do we make sure we have the employees to support the services that are in place? What do we do about placements that may be outside of your geographical area? What happens with transportation? And then finally, there is that space concern that we have to be looking for. So there's a lot of unanswered questions. While I truly believe that the right thing for students would be to have us running that, I think it's important that we go in and have a good plan and that it's done well right from the get-go, because you're also, if you're a parent who has a 3-year-old and it's not well thought out and it's not well planned, and you've started to fracture a relationship that you're now going to have for approximately maybe 14 more years with the school department, I think that we have to make sure that we understand all of the pieces that go into that. And so we'll be working very hard over the spring to think about what that transition, what that financially would look like, what are the operational mechanics of the financial piece, because there's some within the school department, some without, space, and then obviously legislature has to approve those pieces. But that needs to be on our radar screen as a school department, because service level wise, we can't just add another 70 students of services and expect that there's not going to be a need for hiring or a need for administrative support. I mean, that's 70 more IEPs. And what can be a little bit different about CDS services than school year is certainly when a group of kindergartners come, you certainly have kids that come and go. But when you're looking at 3-year-olds, you have a lot. You have kids who are turning 3 September 1, October 1, December 3rd, and so you're picking up those services throughout the year. So understanding how you're going to appropriately staff a situation where your numbers throughout the year you already know will grow, just got to put some effort and real thought behind that. So we're working with the commissioner through Maine School Management Association to have those discussions, really kind of ask the questions of how does this happen, and I'm kind of being a real stickler for we need to have answers before we just take these giant leaps forwards. And some of that is just about how to do the funding, what happens with main care, who does the billing, all of those pieces that we'll work through. So that's what I have tonight, and certainly I can entertain any questions that people would have.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, not seeing any. Moving on. Item number 10 is Chair's Report. School Board Member Chair Preble, do you have a report?
Nothing major to report this evening, thank you.
Thanks. Item number 11, there are no staff reports. Item number 12 is the Board Subcommittee minutes. The Policy and Personnel Committee met this evening, earlier at 5:30 p.m. The Finance and Infrastructure Committee meeting next is February 28th at 4:30, and the Curriculum Committee next meeting is February 26th at 4:30. There is no old business this evening. Item number 14, new business. There is a memo in your packet with new hires. There is no motion needed tonight. There is a memo also for your resignations, and there also is no motion needed this evening. Item number C is the new school classroom sizes. There is a memo in your packet from School Board Chair Preble, and is there a motion? School Board Member Truman?
I move we support the hiring of 55 total teachers for grades 1 through 5 for the new school construction project.
Motion has been made by School Board Member Truman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by School Board Member Roach. Any discussion on the item? Okay, not seeing it. Oh, School Board Member Gale?
So I guess, so the memo was already sent on December 12th to the school board? I mean, not to the school board, excuse me, to the DOE? Is that right? So this is,
Yeah, so we'd had that, our process and understanding is this would be something that would be put forward as part of educational specs, and they're asking for an actual vote on public record for this, so that the funding of the 11 classrooms per grade level would be in the building for, you know, what we expect for class sizes in the future.
so then this is just confirming that the class sizes are, will be maintained to a level of the new building, right? So we're not
Correct.
shrinking anything, we're just keeping everything as
Correct.
we're-
There's
as we've
55,
talked about with the expansion of the
right,
school.
there's 55 classrooms in the plan, and that we would be committing to, based off the information we have today.
Yep.
Because we know that things change.
Right.
But with the information today, that we're committing towards that.
Okay.
Obviously, other boards, other votes, other things will come into play.
Yeah, yeah.
But what we know today.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, roll call vote. School Board Member Archie?
Yes.
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
School Board Member Roach?
Yes.
School Board Member Gale?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
And School Board Member Johnston.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Okay, item number D is a second reading of policies. And there is a list of the policies and 2 items to be stricken. Is there a motion? School Board Member Johnston?
Thank you. I move we approve the second reading of policies EE, AEF, video camera use on school vehicles, EEAEF-R, video camera use on school vehicles administrative procedure, IK, evaluation of student achievement, IKAB, grading and reporting of student progress, IL, evaluation of instructional programs, IJND-R, website and social media guidelines, and IJNDB, student computer and internet use. And I move to strike IJNDC, school system website / web pages, and IJNDB-E, student computer / internet use acknowledgement form.
Second.
Motion has been made by School Board Member Johnston, second by School Board Member Truman. Any discussion on any of those? School Board Member Roach?
So I'm new, and I think it's the first policy that's new, the video cameras on the bus. Can you just explain that a little more, like costs and you know, that what instigated it, or is there, or you know, how that all works really?
So we already had cameras on all of our school buses. That's been, I don't actually know when that's been in place, but I imagine it's for quite some time. What we did not have was a policy on the books to further clarify and outline access to those, how long they're kept, all of those things that are outlined in the policy. So it's really just about clarifying our internal procedures and making sure that those are consistent with what is legal in the instance of surveillance on school buses.
And is it, how long do you keep a day's worth of activity on the bus?
So this was a good conversation that we had in policy committee. The length, we can generally go back a week or so, but it's highly dependent on how many runs that bus has taken, how long those runs are, et cetera, because it starts to rewrite its own memory card if that card isn't pulled and reviewed and maintained for some other purpose.
So should something be communicated to parents, teachers, bus drivers, that if you have an incident on the bus, it needs to be reported? I mean, I guess they can report it anytime, but there's not gonna be video of it after a week. If they don't report it, that day or soon after.
We could certainly consider communicating that. I think that we've definitely had those conversations as things are reported, and generally we do get reports within that window. It's when parents make reports much later than a week out, we run into an issue where it's like, if somebody reports that something happened in a window of 5 or 6 days on a bus, you're talking about like watching 10 to 20 hours of video to try to find one incident. So unless they know the specific date and it's pretty close, it can be tricky to find.
I like the communication the other way, like, hey, parents, you're on video here, so have your kids behave.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
School Board Member Archie.
Hey, Meg. Just a little technology question. So what happens if there's an incident the Friday before a vacation? I mean,
Well,
is there anything we could do to change that? Or?
It doesn't necessarily get written over then because nobody's using the buses over February vacation. It's not a time,
it's a
it's
loop
not
record.
a time
Okay.
window. It's a loop
Okay.
record unless we
Yeah.
pull that to watch it. So ideally, somebody is able to email somebody and we can do a lot of that remotely. Like I've watched videos not sitting in the transportation department and I've watched videos sitting in the transportation department. But as long as we know the date and it hasn't written over itself, we can find it.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, roll call vote. School Board Member Archie?
Yes.
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
School Board Member Roach?
Yes.
School Board Member Gale?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
School Board Member Johnston?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. Okay, item 15, is there any other information? Okay, nothing. And there is no executive session this evening. That takes us to item 17, and that is an adjournment.
So moved.
Is there
Second.
motion made by School Board Member Johnston? Truman? Second by School Board Member Preble. Roll call vote. School Board Member Archie?
Yes.
School Board Member Preble?
Yes.
School Board Member Richards?
Yes.
School Board Member Roach?
Another touch of gray, yes.
School Board Member Gale?
Yes.
School Board Member Truman?
Yes.
And School Board Member Johnston?
Yes.
Motion to adjourn passes 7-0. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.